You weren't blind. You weren't clueless. You saw the late replies, the half-hearted hugs, the change in how they said, "I love you." It used to sound like a promise. Now it just sounds like a habit, like something they say because they have to. There's a quiet kind of pain that doesn't make noise, but it lives inside your chest, like a weight you can't put down. And that's where you were. Not in denial because you didn't know, but because you did. And knowing hurt more than pretending. Maybe you told yourself, it's just stress, or they're tired, or it's nothing, don't overthink. But your gut, that quiet voice inside you, it knew. It always knew. This isn't a story about someone being stupid for staying. This is a story about someone who loved deeply, someone who noticed the lies and stayed anyway. Because leaving them would hurt, but accepting that they changed, that hurt even more. So you stayed silent. You laughed when you were supposed to. You said good night, like everything was all right. You tried to act normal, even when nothing felt normal anymore. This video, this message, is for you. The person who knew the truth, but chose peace over confrontation. The person who hoped things would go back to how they used to be. The person who wasn't fooled, just afraid of losing the one thing they still wished was real. If that's you, stay. I understand you more than you think. It never starts with something obvious. It's not like a movie where you catch them in the act or see something dramatic. No, real heartbreak is quieter. Maybe it was the night they sat beside you, but their mind was somewhere else. You said something funny, and they smiled, but not the way they used to. Or maybe you asked them, "Are you okay?" And they said, "Yeah, just tired." But their eyes told a different story. Or one day, you looked at them, really looked at them, and felt like you didn't recognize them anymore. The same face, the same voice, but a different presence. Something in them had already left you. It could have been small. A message they hid. A name they said too casually. A story that didn't add up. A shift in energy. The kind that everyone else would miss, but you couldn't. Because when you love someone, you know their voice, their tone, their silence. There's always that moment of realization. Something's wrong. But you don't scream. You don't walk away. You just go quiet. A little story. There was a guy who loved this girl more than anything. He noticed her distance. He saw her slipping. But every time he thought about confronting it, his heart whispered, "What if you're wrong? What if you push her away?" So he smiled. He stayed. And that's the first scar. The one no one sees. Because that moment, the moment you knew, that was when the heartbreak started. Not when they left. Not when the truth came out. But when you first felt it inside and stayed silent anyway. People on the outside think silence means ignorance. They think you didn't see it, that you were blind. But you weren't. You just had something more powerful than the truth. Hope. You stayed for a few reasons. One, because you were afraid to lose them. You knew that if you said something, if you called them out, things might break beyond repair. And you weren't ready to lose them. Not yet. So you kept the peace even when it cost your own. Two, because you loved who they used to be. You weren't holding on to the person in front of you. You were holding on to memories, late-night talks, forehead kisses, laughter that felt real. You stayed because you missed that version of them. 3. Because you wanted the lie to be true. As painful as it sounds, the lie felt safer than the truth. Believing everything's okay is easier than accepting they don't love me anymore. 4. Because you thought love meant fighting, even alone. Somewhere along the way, someone taught you that love meant staying, enduring, holding on even when it hurts. So you did. And that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. There was a guy who said, "I didn't stay because I was stupid. I stayed because I loved her. And for a while, that love was enough for me." That's the truth about pretending not to know. You weren't clueless. You were choosing love over reality, comfort over confrontation, hope over heartbreak, even if it broke you slowly. Silence doesn't protect you. It slowly destroys you. When you know the truth, but act like you don't, you start living a double life. On the outside, you smile. You say, "I'm fine." You go about your day. But inside, something is quietly breaking. You wake up with anxiety, wondering if today is the day everything falls apart. You overthink every text, every word, every second of eye contact. You compare how things are now to how they used to be. You blame yourself. And the worst part? You stop trusting yourself. You start thinking, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe it's all in my head. But deep down, you know it's not. You start losing sleep. You replay conversations at 2 a.m. You stare at the ceiling and think, why am I the only one fighting for this? And even though they're the one lying, you're the one apologizing. You're the one trying harder, loving louder, holding on tighter. But pretending comes with a price. You lose your voice, your confidence, your peace. You become a version of yourself who is constantly walking on eggshells, afraid to say or feel too much. There's a quiet kind of loneliness that comes from being next to someone who's already gone. And that's the kind of loneliness you felt. This isn't sadness that makes you cry loud. It's sadness that makes you silent, withdrawn, number. The kind that makes you sit in a room full of people and still feel completely alone. And the hardest part to admit? You didn't lose them in one moment. You lost them slowly, every time you chose silence over truth. Let's get one thing straight. Staying wasn't weakness. Loving them wasn't a mistake. It was human. You loved someone so much that you were willing to carry pain just to keep them close. That's not something to be ashamed of. It means your heart was real. Your love was real. You cared, even when they didn't. People who've never loved deeply might say, "I would have left the second I noticed." But love doesn't work like that. Love makes you patient. It makes you see the best in people, even when they're showing you their worst. And yes, maybe you stayed too long. Maybe you loved too hard. But that's because your heart is loyal. You don't give up easily. You don't throw people away. You believed in them, even when they stopped believing in you. There's a quote that says, "You weren't stupid. You weren't blind. You were in love." And that is one of the most powerful, dangerous, beautiful things a person can be. So don't hate yourself for staying. Don't call yourself foolish. You felt something real. You tried. You gave your best. And that makes you brave, not weak. What makes you strong isn't the moment you held on. It's the moment you finally said, "I deserve better than this." There comes a moment, not loud, not dramatic, where something inside you just shifts. It's the moment you stop waiting for an apology. Stop hoping they'll suddenly love you the way they used to. Stop checking your phone, wishing their message will fix everything. Instead, you go quiet. But not the hurting kind of quiet. The accepting kind. Acceptance doesn't always look like tears or shouting or walking away dramatically. Sometimes it looks like sitting in silence, taking a deep breath, and finally saying to yourself, "It's over. They're not who they used to be, and I can't keep pretending." For some, acceptance comes after a big fight. For others, it comes in small moments, like hearing their voice and realizing it no longer brings peace, or lying next to them and feeling like strangers sharing the same bed. There's a story of a man who said, "I didn't leave when she lied. I didn't leave when she hurt me. I left the day I realized I was hurting myself by staying." That's what acceptance is. It isn't about losing them. It's about choosing not to lose yourself anymore. You don't chase them. You don't beg. You don't scream. You just let go. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you started loving yourself, even just a little more. Healing doesn't start the moment they leave. It begins when you stop waiting for them to come back. It's not fast. It's not pretty. Some days you'll feel okay. Other days you'll miss them so much it hurts to breathe. That's normal. But slowly, things change. You stop checking their social media. You stop rehearsing what you would have said to them. You stop blaming yourself. You wake up one morning and realize you didn't think about them first thing. That's healing. Healing is forgiving yourself, not for loving them, but for forgetting to love you too. It's understanding that you can miss someone and still know they're not good for you. It's learning to sit alone and not feel lonely. It's taking back your peace, piece by piece. Here's what you need to remember. You did your best. You loved honestly. That was enough. If it wasn't enough for them, that's not your fault. And one day, someone will look at you and love the very things they ignored. Someone will choose you, loudly, proudly, honestly. But before they do, you have to choose yourself first. You weren't fooled. You just didn't want to believe it. And that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. You saw the truth. You felt the distance. You heard the lies in their voice. And still, you chose love. You chose hope. You chose to stay. Now, choose yourself. This isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of a stronger one. The part where you stop begging to be chosen and start choosing yourself. So if you're watching this in silence, holding back tears, I see you, and I promise, this pain won't last forever. One day, you'll look back and realize this was the moment everything changed. Not because they broke you, but because you finally decided to heal. Take a deep breath. You're going to be okay.